Today we'll be taking a look at the role, responsibilities and history of the office of Consul in the time of the Roman Republic. The role of Consul was the highest level of elected office that could be held in the time of the Roman Republic from the years 509 BC to 207 BC. It was usually seen as the peak of a Roman politician's career and was the most prestigious office upon the Cursus Honorum, which meant the sequence of offices someone could climb in the Senate. The rank in office was initially known as a praetor, but by around 300 BC the word consul had become commonly associated with the office, with praetor becoming a different role within the Senate altogether. The consulship was initially reserved specifically for patricians, but in 367 BC plebeians gained the right to become a consul as dictated by a series of laws proposed by the tribune of the plebs known as the Lex Licinia Sextia, which called for one consul per year to be a plebeian. Lucius Sextius became the first plebeian to reach the office of consul in 366 BC. They were elected by one of the Roman assemblies known as the Comitia Centuriata. Consulships are so essential to the continued operation of the Roman Republic that each year was named after its two respective serving consuls. For example, the year of Caesar's first consulship, 59 BC, will be referred to by Romans as the consulship of Caesar and Bibulus. If a consul would die during his year in office, he would be replaced by another elected consul. The originally elected consul would be known as a consul ordinarius or an ordinary consul, while one elected to finish a consul's term would be known as a consul suffectus or a suffect consul. The consul originally elected to begin the year in office would still ultimately be one of the consuls the year was named after. Every year 2 consuls were elected, and each month in office the consuls would usually switch between which of the 2 was in charge or holding fasces. This usually meant that one consul would pursue their goals for the month while the other consul took more of a backseat for the month. The consul who would be in charge or hold fasces first was a consul who received more of the votes in the election for the consulship, with it alternating back and forth each consecutive month. While in office, both consuls held imperium, granting them absolute authority. This essentially made them the most powerful men in Rome during their consulship. Because of this fact, the imperium of a consul was limited in a number of ways. First of all, each consul had the power to veto one another's decisions in order to protect one consul from abusing their office and gaining a king-like authority over the Republic. This could only be done by the tribune of the plebs, and basically meant that the consuls were generally unable to work well together if not in unison, or at least not in conflict of interest. Also, the consulship was limited to a 1-year run in office before new consuls were elected to stop any particular consul from gaining too much power from their position. The office of consul also came with a minimum age of 40 for patricians and 42 for plebeians, and a politician could not become a consul for 10 years after his initial year in office to stop anyone from holding imperium for too long or too frequently. Despite these rules being put in place, they weren't always followed. A prime example of this is Gaius Marius, who served for 5 consecutive consulships from 104 BC to 100 BC. Furthermore, consuls were nominated by the Senate and elected by the people, ensuring that only those who served the Republic well in the eyes of not only the Senate but the people of the Republic itself would have a chance at getting a shot to become consul. Over time, some powers of a consul, such as the power to appoint and remove senators, were given as roles to other offices. In this case, the role of appointing and removing senators being given to the plebiscitum ovinium, also known as the lex ovinia. The removal of these powers over time, while making the role of consul not as absolutely powerful, didn't undermine the authority of the consul, and it still remained a greatly respected office until the end of the Republic. Being a Roman consul was in a way the modern day equivalent to being a head of state, with consuls holding many important powers and having many responsibilities, both civil and military. In a way, it made them the closest thing to a king or ruler that the Republic would have, except in exceptional circumstances such as the appointment of a dictator for a span of 6 months, at which point the consul's power would be exceeded. First of all, we'll look at the civil side of a consul's duties. While within Rome's Pomerium, the consuls would essentially act as the heads of the Senate. They would be able to convene the Senate and were also able to set agendas for Senate meetings, which meant that they were able to introduce and discuss their ideas and policies. They could also call for assemblies, allowing for legislation to be voted on and passed. This all meant that the consuls were in a great position to make their ideas and policies into Roman law. As well as overseeing the passing of legislation in the Roman assemblies, consuls also conducted elections, which put them in control of a great deal of political power. If they wanted to, it is possible for a consul to get his own people into offices that could benefit both himself and his allies. Consuls also possessed legal authority in the sense that they had the power of summons and arrest. Alongside all of this, they also acted as diplomats, meeting and interacting with foreign ambassadors and introducing them before the Senate. Their diplomatic role also meant that they would be the ones to carry out negotiations between the Roman Senate and foreign peoples. These civil responsibilities, especially the power over Senate meetings and assemblies, as well as leading interactions with foreign ambassadors, really show just how much a consul could change both the face of Roman politics and even the world map. Acting consuls would be accompanied in public with 12 lictors, who both highlighted the power of the consulship and acted as personal bodyguards. Each lictor held a type of axe known as a securus, which was enclosed in a bundle of rods known as fasces. Each item had a symbolic meaning, essentially showing that the consul could order both capital and corporal punishment. Now we will look at the consul's military role and responsibilities. The Roman consul's imperium was much more absolute when it came to military campaigns, with him being able to decide his own military strategy, conducting the campaign in the best way he thought. Also, while within the city of Rome itself consuls didn't have power to enact capital punishment, while dealing in military matters their power was unchecked and they could punish anyone under them in whichever way they pleased. These two factors combined made the word and strategy of a consul on a military campaign definitive. Consuls were given charge of an army while in power, usually 2 legions which they had complete control over. If 2 consuls were to march their armies together, leadership would be switched between them on a daily basis, just like how this occurred on a monthly basis with civil matters. This wasn't always a great thing, as both consuls could have conflicting objectives or tactics in a certain scenario, leading to a different strategy each day. This could have catastrophic effects, with an example being the Battle of Lake Trasimene in the Second Punic War. Both consuls had combined their armies together to defeat Hannibal, but they had differing opinions as to how this should be done. Gnaeus Servilius Geminus believed that Fabian tactics, a strategy which involved indirect wearing down of an opponent rather than frontal military assaults, was the best way to defeat Hannibal. The other consul, Gaius Flaminius, was much more confident with a head-on attack against the enemy and knew they were nearby, so wanted to chase them. As Flaminius held Imperium, he decided to rely on his strategy, which was not favoured by his fellow consul, and he laid chase to the enemy army. With this being a military matter as opposed to a civil matter, Geminus was unable to use veto power, meaning the approach of Flaminius was the undebatable approach. This ultimately ended in a crushing Roman defeat, with about 15,000 of their soldiers dying in the fight. In part, defeats like this could also come down to the consul's suitability for military matters. In Roman politics, a good politician would ideally be equally as skilled in both civil and military matters. While this was sometimes the case, such as with Julius Caesar or Pompey the Great, it definitely wasn't a universal combination of skills that every consul possessed. While in times of conflict, a consul's military capability would have factored more heavily in his election, a consul wouldn't always have been elected based on his military capabilities, but instead for things such as social standard. In this sense, the consuls wouldn't always be the best people to hold absolute command of Rome's armies, as they lacked the core skill of military leadership needed to effectively use such a powerful tool. With the consuls' yearly rotations, new consuls would replace those who just began to gain the knowledge and skill to effectively wield their power of military leadership. Once a consul had finished his year-long term in office, their career wasn't usually over. A consul would usually be assigned a province that they would govern over as a proconsul once their year as a consul had concluded. These terms as a proconsul would usually last between 1 and 5 years, and the proconsul would be granted imperium only for the province or provinces which they controlled. Ex-consuls could also still play a key role in the Senate, giving advice and opinions on political matters. Their opinions were usually very highly regarded, with these men having proved their political skill through both getting elected as consul and for their acts while in office. In both of these ways, while the consulship may have been a statesman's highest point, he could still make a very prominent mark in Roman history. It's clear that the office of consul is hugely influential, and with the election of such a respected office, it was a gateway for Roman politicians to cement their legacy into Roman history. Many of the Roman Republic's most influential and important people served as consuls, such as Caesar, Pompey and Cicero, and the years in which many of them served were filled with great and interesting stories. I hope to cover some of these stories and show much more of Rome's compelling history, and want to thank you for watching this video and supporting the channel. Please leave a comment if you want me to cover any more information surrounding offices in the Roman Republic, or if you want me to cover any more information about the Senate, and I'll be happy to make them for you.